We begin with this developing story, a passionate rebuke of the congresswoman who criticized President Trump's phone call to a soldier's widow from a man who knows firsthand what it's like to lose a son in war. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, the anchor of the Intelligence Report on Fox Business, Trish Regan. The editor of townhall.com, Katie Pavlich. Former national security staffer under presidents both Bush and Obama, Jillian Turner. Today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Fox News political analyst and co-host of The Five, Juan Williams, is here. He's outnumbered, but he told me a few minutes ago he's happy on the couch. It's not always outnumbered.
Oh, I love this couch. And you know what a great weekend? Pumpkins everywhere. Halloween. I mean, I go into the neighborhoods, it's like cobwebs and goblins.
You're a Halloween fan.
Really?
I did not know this about you.
So what are you going to be this year?
Well, I was thinking of dressing up in a dress because I could fit in the colors, you see?
We'll send you the color wheel.
Talk to Harris. Talk to Harris.
About which color?
Yes.
Well, I love the red tie, so you're wearing the crimson, so that looks gorgeous.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to the news. A lot to get to. It's made for an extraordinary and raw moment at yesterday's White House press briefing. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, a Gold Star father himself, emotionally defended the president against a Democratic congresswoman's claim that President Trump was insensitive to a grieving widow.
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife, and in his way tried to express that opinion. He's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken.
But the congresswoman, Frederica Wilson of Florida, fired back. She said General Kelly is just trying to save his job, and that's now personal. She had this message for the Chief of Staff this morning.
I have lost members of the Role Models Project in war before, during the Iraq War. We know what it is. You have my deepest sympathy, but I would never say to you, your son knew what he was signing up for. That would not be a part of my sympathy message to you.
President Trump again weighed in on this firestorm, tweeting this morning, "The fake news is going crazy with wacky Congresswoman Wilson, Democrat, who was secretly on a very personal call and gave a total lie on content." Congresswoman Wilson says she was not secretly listening, but was with the family in the car during the call, which was on speaker. Juan, I want to come to you first on this because this has now turned to politics, and the Gold Star families don't win when people battle over things with them in the middle.
Harris, you're exactly right. And so, you know, it's one of those things that to me is somewhat sacred given the notion of sacrificing one's life for country.
Should she ever have repeated what was in that phone call?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, the part that's, you know, let's go back for a second. I'll answer your question because I think you want an answer very pointedly.
I think a lot of people would like to know.
But I think that we need to put some context here. And to me, the context is that there was an attack in Niger that killed 4 Americans. And a lot of people didn't even know we were there or what was going on, but the president didn't comment on it for more than 2 weeks. So he was asked at a press conference earlier this week, how come you haven't done anything? Call the families, issued a release. We knew that there was a release prepared, never sent out by the White House. And he then said something very political about President Obama, previous presidents not always making calls. That sparked a lot of response from not only President Obama's team, but Bush's team.
Please get to my question.
So then the answer about politicizing it, then at that point you had a political furor being stoked.
But it didn't have anything to do with the congresswoman from Florida until she stepped in and didn't complete the whole quote. We had Kellyanne Conway on Overtime, Outnumbered Overtime yesterday. She said, read the rest of the quote. Which had to do with the fact that he was also giving some condolences. Katie, I see you nodding.
It was a private moment that should have never been disclosed to anybody. President Trump probably didn't call because John Kelly, as he said yesterday, advised the president maybe he shouldn't call. He said it's nice that he does, but I advised the president not to call because it's actually not what the families want to hear. It's not a phone call that they want to get. In terms of the focus that we're seeing on John Kelly's remarks, we're all focused on the part about this Congresswoman and him hitting back against her, which I guess was the purpose of him coming out yesterday. But actually, to me, the beginning of his remarks were the most important. When he talks to the American people directly about what happens when a soldier is killed on the battlefield, he goes into detail about soldiers wrapping their fellow soldiers in a shroud and them getting sent home to their family. And we're just focused on this petty battle between a congresswoman who should have never said anything about the phone call when there are men and women dying who deserve better.
Well, you know, one of the issues here is about, do we leave people behind? Because this soldier...
All right. I want to get Jillian in here.
I think there's a lot of feelings about this. Feelings about who said what. The core of this is what Katie said. It's the folks who have sacrificed their lives. But to me, the feelings that matter in this situation, and the only ones we really need to be cognizant of, are not General Kelly's, not the president's, not Congresswoman Wilson's. It's the widow and the mother of Sergeant Johnson. That's what matters here. And I think it should be a private moment, but the White House has folks listening on their end. I think that if the mother and the widow of Sergeant Johnson want to have family and friends, a congresswoman, if they want to have Bozo the Clown sitting in on the call, they should be.
I don't think having the people has been the question. I think it's what people share once they have been privy to that information. You know, all of this came to a head. You told us about the Niger portion of all of this. I know Senator McCain is pushing to get the details on that mission that apparently wasn't widely known. But all of this now comes to a head because now you have this congresswoman who is upping the ante at every point. And I don't want to press too hard on what we're about to watch together and get your response to this, Trish, because it isn't so much what she says, it's the fact that she's joking. This is Congresswoman Wilson being asked about the entire situation and how it has elevated her in the public eye. Watch this.
You mean to tell me that I have become so important that the White House is following me and my words? This is amazing. It's amazing. That is absolutely phenomenal. I have to tell my kids that I'm a rock star now.
So what do you think she anticipated would happen when she put out an incomplete soundbite from the president? I mean, he denied it at first, and he should have said he said it, because he did, but it wasn't the whole quote.
I think she anticipated exactly like this. I think she anticipated, hopefully, in her mind, becoming a quote-unquote rock star. This was done for political purposes. This was not done with the thoughts of the family or, frankly, the thoughts of the country behind what her actions were. You can tell because, Harris, no one would do that. I mean, we're all human beings. No one would do that. No one would make an example of this family and exploit this family for their own political purposes and try and create further divide. I mean, it's just your own humanity, right? And I don't think she showed any humanity at all in this instance.
Well, let me just respond to this because I think this is so important. All of us on this couch this afternoon are feeling sort of emotional power over the politics and the death. But I must say that initially, and even today, President Trump said it was a secret and that she somehow violated the secrecy involved. And I just want to go beyond that and go back to the family. That the mother, not just the congresswoman, but the mother of the slain soldier, said she was upset by the president's comments.
So, and that begs the question, Trish, is the I'm not defending the congresswoman. I have nothing good to say about this, but maybe she's not exploiting the family. Maybe the family wanted her to speak out about this issue since she was on the call.
We're going down the road of conjecture about what this family would have wanted. And I think respectfully, when we talk about this family, you know, the only thing that needs to be said is about their suffering.
I just say John Kelly gave remarks yesterday that every American should listen to, even if you disagree. It was humbling to a room that needed to hear it, and I think that people should watch it over and over again and learn some lessons about things that they don't have to deal with on a regular basis because they live in America.
All right, we'll move on. Trish?
Another Fox News alert for you. The Senate clearing a critical hurdle, paving the way for tax reform. Senate Republicans passing a budget in a 51-49 vote. Its approval helps unlock a procedure GOP lawmakers can now use to rewrite the tax code. The only Republican to vote no on the resolution was, good old Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. President Trump tweeting, "The budget passed last night, 51 to 49. We got 0 Democrat votes with only Rand Paul. He will vote for tax cuts, voting against." This now allows for the passage of large-scale tax cuts and reform, which will be the biggest in our nation's history. This is a big deal. Senator Paul tweeting back at the president this morning, "I'm all in for tax cuts. The biggest, boldest cuts possible and soon!" Exclamation point. But as the president said, no Democrats voted for the budget. Many of them spoke out against it on the floor. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders not holding back. Watch.
It is a horrific budget bill, an extremely cruel bill, and the most unfair budget ever presented in the modern history of our country. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this budget provides $1.9 trillion in tax breaks for the top 1%. At a time when millions of working families are struggling to keep their heads above water, this budget cuts Medicaid by $1 trillion. 15 million Americans could lose their health insurance.
All right. Well, you get where he's coming from. Do you think it's actually going to happen, Katie? I mean, the Republicans, they need to show that they can stick together on this. Otherwise, Bernie Sanders and others are going to get their way.
First of all, I always think it's funny how Bernie Sanders is ranting against the top 1% and the rich when he is included in that number. He does have 3 houses after all. Maybe he can reallocate some of that to the poor college students who are having trouble paying rent and living in their parents' houses. But in how we get this done, can Republicans do this? I think that they can. It's going to take a lot of work, and there has to be a negotiation long term, not just on the current tax package, but later on. Rand Paul is concerned about spending. He should be. The country should be concerned about spending. The president has said that we offset by growth in the economy through more people being hired and paying taxes. So is there going to be a timeline? If we see a certain amount of growth by X number of dates, or if we don't, how are we going to address spending?
I hear you on that. Juan, are any Democrats going to vote for it? Any Democrats on corporate tax reform?
No, a tax reform, you would get votes. That's a good point. But if this is not tax reform, which is what the president promised, this is tax cuts. So everybody wants a simpler tax structure, do away with the loopholes. Let's do away with all the complexity. But this is not about that. I think he's given up on that. What he and the Republicans
No, he hasn't
want
given
right
up on
now
that. He's talking about 3 tax brackets. And by the way, down to 20% for corporations.
Correct.
We have the
That's
highest
what we're
corporate
talking
taxes
about.
in the entire darn world right
No,
now.
we
Juan.
do not. We do not have.
20?
Yeah.
You know what? It could. It could go to 22. It could go to
And what
25.
does
It could go
that
to
mean?
29. But I would
looking
still
at a
take it,
stock
Harris.
market right now that, I mean, wow, I almost
Yes.
want to make a selfie of it every day just to show that it happened in my lifetime.
Yeah, really.
And so it is going to move one way or the other, right? You and I have
The
talked about the gravity of if policies don't get passed.
Here's what happens if policies don't get passed. This is what I call an hourglass economy. All right, an hourglass. You got the top up here. They have benefited from rising stock prices. They benefit from asset inflation. You got the bottom down here. They have benefited from an increase in programs. It's the middle class that's feeling the squeeze, and they need help.
$1.5 trillion it will add to the federal deficit over the next 10 years.
That's a problem for Republicans.
But Republicans say they have the votes.
All right, everyone. Former President Obama back on the campaign trail. He is out there slamming his successor, saying our democracy is at stake, and people should reject the politics of division and fear. Whether this will serve Democrats well, or is it time for better messaging? And former Attorney General Loretta Lynch is on Capitol Hill being questioned as part of investigators look into Russia. But they'll likely ask about Hillary Clinton's emails, and that time Lynch told James Comey to call the investigation, quote, a matter. Whether we'll get any answers next.
Fox News alert, a lot of questions on Capitol Hill for the woman who ran the Justice Department under President Obama. Former Attorney General Loretta Lynch meeting with members of the House Intelligence Committee behind closed doors today. It's part of their ongoing probe into Russian interference in the presidential election. But it's likely she is also getting questions on her involvement in the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. And of course, this testimony from former FBI Director James Comey back in June.
At one point, the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me. And again, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but it gave the impression that the Attorney General was looking to align the way we talked about our work with the way a political campaign was describing the same activity, which was inaccurate. We had a criminal investigation open, as I've said before, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We had an investigation open at the time, and so that gave me a queasy feeling.
We can also expect lawmakers to question Lynch about that tarmac meeting she had with Bill Clinton while the probe into his wife's emails was still ongoing. Actually, criminal investigation, of course. So, Juan, my question to you is the House Intelligence Committee going to buy the argument that Loretta Lynch simply talked about grandchildren and golfing with Bill Clinton during that private meeting?
Not if you're a Republican. I think you're going to try to drill in, and you've got right there what you heard from Jim Comey, saying that he felt somewhat, I think he used the word queasy, Katie. So he was queasy, and I think Republicans are going to say, well, did you think that she was trying to undercut the investigation? And now you have Lynch in front of you. You're going to say, former Madam Secretary, why did you prefer the use of the term matter versus investigation? She has said and indicated that she did not consider it at that juncture to be non-political, to use a term like investigation, that she thought it would be somewhat, it would suggest that something more was going on than they knew.
Can I ask, why would it matter? Why would it matter to Loretta Lynch if it were going to cloud the situation for one or the other candidates politically? Why would it matter? If the word is true, why don't you use the word that is true, investigation? Why do you have a dog in the fight?
I think they want to stay out of politics.
Well, that's not how you stay out. You speak the truth.
But I think that was
you don't reorder
that's
the
her
words
defense.
to make it fit.
Well,
right?
Trish, there was reporting in the Washington Post earlier last year saying that Loretta Lynch had been in contact with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, of course, who was in charge of the DNC at the time, alleging that she wouldn't let the Clinton investigation go too far. So this is an issue of corruption that the House Intelligence Committee is taking a look at.
They got to figure out what actually happened here. I mean, they really do. The idea of trying to call something a matter as opposed to a criminal investigation. Remember how the left would flip out whenever the words criminal investigation were used on television? I can remember guests saying, no, it's not a criminal investigation. But if it's an investigation by the FBI, it is a criminal investigation. Right. I mean, this was all calculated by the Democratic Party in cahoots with Loretta Lynch, and there needs to be some serious questioning done, because you're right, we can't have that kind of corruption.
Jillian, there's been a lot of questions, too, about James Comey's role in usurping Loretta Lynch's authority, which is why he says he came out so publicly about the investigation. There's also big questions about Loretta Lynch's role in the Russia investigation.
Yeah, and so before our conversation goes further, I think I need to just exercise a word of caution, which is we're conflating two issues here in this conversation. There is the matter of the Russia investigation and meddling in the 2016 election, and the matter of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. And that wraps in the Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton meeting on the tarmac. What Loretta Lynch is actually officially requested to talk about in front of House and Senate Intel and Senate Judiciary is the former. She's there to talk about Russian meddling in the investigation. They might not even get to touch on this. We might not get any answers, any clarity whatsoever about the Lynch-Clinton meeting. What she's really going to be questioned about, I'm sure some senators will go rogue and ask off-topic questions. But the focus of this is really Russia's role in attempted interference in the election. What role did the DOJ, which she ran, and the FBI, which is part of DOJ, have in that? So just want to point that out to everyone.
Lots of questions.
And the probe into that, they didn't want to use probe investigation. They wanted to use the word matter.
Well, we're going to use criminal investigation here on this couch, indeed. Well, GOP Senator Lamar Alexander urging Republicans to change course on health care reform after multiple attempts to repeal and replace Obamacare have failed. Does he have a point, or should Republicans stay the course? Plus, former President Obama blasting President Trump during his first campaign appearance since leaving the Oval Office. Haven't we seen the strategy before, and didn't it fail Democrats last time around? We'll discuss.
We are rejecting a politics of division. We are rejecting a politics of fear.
Senator Lamar Alexander is urging fellow Republicans to change course on health care reform after dozens of attempts to repeal Obamacare ended in failure, as you know. His bipartisan health care deal with Democrat Patty Murray continues gaining support, with 24 senators now, 12 from each party signing on as co-sponsors. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer even says the bill has 60 votes and is calling on Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put it on the floor. Here's what he had to say earlier this week.
It was the product of months of difficult negotiations. And like all good negotiations, both sides gave some, both sides got some. The product is something that neither side is completely happy with, but both sides can move forward with. That's what a good, fair compromise looks like.
And then there's this. President Trump initially supported the bipartisan deal, but later appeared to back off, tweeting, "I am supportive of Lamar as a person and also of the process, but I can never support bailing out insurance companies who have made a fortune with Obamacare." So the big question here is, Katie, are they at a stalemate?
Well, maybe. They've been in a stalemate, I feel like, since the president came into office. But how this is maybe going to work, the president is right when he says the insurance companies have made a lot of money on Obamacare, which is the reason why they signed up for Obamacare in the first place. There are big questions about why they would get involved. Why would they want to get involved with the government taking over health care? Isn't that bad for the economy, bad for the individual? It is, but it's good for the insurance companies. So they've got to maybe find a way in their new approach to this to get that money directly to people to pay for their premiums rather than funneling it through all of these insurance companies or through even state governments.
So today will be the first day. President Trump has put forward a move to no longer have those subsidies in place. What do you think that looks like going forward?
Well, if you don't have subsidies in place, then that actually might mean you get a more fair pricing system because you don't have the government effectively helping to run up prices. I mean, think about how it interferes with incentives, right, and pricing power. If the government is willing to spend X number of dollars on a policy for you, well, the insurance company says, all right, I got that money baked in, so I might as well just charge a little bit more. And you see this, I mean, you see this in education costs with colleges. The government gives so much, so sure enough, the inflation in insurance and healthcare out of control.
All right. So, but we don't know necessarily how day one will look like with this, right? I mean, we've been waiting for the new pricing from insurance companies. It never came over the summer. They were waiting to see what was going to happen with Obamacare. Now we are at the point of reckoning, and those subsidies for the first time won't be paid today.
Well, but there's no question it'll destabilize markets. So what you have
you guys are saying something different.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's, to my understanding, because I'm not an expert, but I read about this constantly, and it says the insurance companies say they're going to have to raise premiums in some cases because it will destabilize markets by withdrawing the subsidies.
You're trying to put competition into the marketplace.
Well, you can put competition in,
which
but the
ideally
key
drives down prices.
Remember, the key is, and this is the reason Republicans were unable to produce a plan after 7 years of planning repeal and replace, is because they couldn't come up with a better plan to cover more people who lack insurance and to reduce premiums. If they had a better plan, I think, given that they control both the House and Senate, they would have passed it.
But the other fatal flaw is that Republicans have tried to divide, in the face of failure, they have decided and tried unsuccessfully to separate repeal and replace. And that has been an even more dismal failure. This is something that, to his credit, Senator Alexander, whether you like his plan or don't, is trying to grapple with. And I give him kudos for it because not many folks in the Senate are doing that right now.
So it's a Band-Aid, right? Is that the idea? You put a few Band-Aids in and they don't work either? I would like to see the actual system get reformed.
Let me finish my point. Big picture, This is the opposite of a Band-Aid. Repealing without replacement has always been the Band-Aid. That's kicking the can down the road. That is saying we want the American people to accept nothing in the place of a
this
solution,
replacement still
and we'll
allows
figure it
for
out
federal
later.
funding of insurance companies. And what I'm telling you is you will never get fair pricing in the insurance market.
You also won't get the president on board.
If you don't have the consumer driving that, you cannot have the government.
This is all about
writing
politics.
a check.
This is about
so the
these
president
guys
says
wanting policies not to be responsible for the premium increases. So they're trying to make sure that they still feed the beast with the money from the federal government without having to suffer the electoral consequences in an election next year, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
And the president says he won't get on board with that. Real quickly, so you had the executive order that brought a person like Rand Paul on board. Remember that kind of funny, smiley picture of Rand Paul standing behind the president. The president's like, wow, whoever thought this would, I mean, I got this guy on board, and if he says it's okay. So you do have that cross state lines insurance possibility there. So there are some things that are feeding competition back into the market, but we'll have to see what happens after today.
But I think it's important that Republicans and Democrats work on this rather than to continue the kind of political clash that destabilizes the system for people who need health insurance.
Well, if they get to 60 votes, I wonder if Mitch McConnell will put it on the floor.
We got to move on, but we'll continue it later, guys. Former President Barack Obama is returning to the campaign trail where he blasted President Trump without mentioning his name during campaign stops for two Democratic gubernatorial candidates. President Obama yesterday warned voters that our democracy is at stake in the coming election, saying that folks really don't feel good right now. Take a look.
We've got folks who are deliberately trying to make folks angry, to demonize people who have different ideas. Some of the politics we see now, we thought we put that to bed. I mean, that's folks looking 50 years back. We are rejecting a politics of division. We are rejecting a politics of fear.
So, to be fair, President Obama, Juan, is not the only person who is sort of pointing out his unhappiness and his criticism of the president on this issue when it comes to what he sees as his failure to unite the country. Conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, everyone from John McCain to former President Bush, who carried a similar message yesterday, are kind of saying, look, you said you were going to unite the country. What's happened? What do you think?
Well, first, let's just say both men, President Obama and President Bush yesterday, didn't call out the president by name. But they spoke about the politics of today in such a way that it seemed the inescapable conclusion that they were saying, hey, President Trump, you're acting in a way that's divisive, that has invited conspiracy theories, white supremacy into the conversation, and they don't like it. So on one level, they are speaking, I guess, as patriots trying to look out for the best of the country, but they're both speaking at political events. So I don't know. I wonder how this is interpreted by the American people in a very polarized moment. Do Republicans and Democrats hear them as speaking out for the best of the country, or do they think, oh, this is just more politics?
Barack Obama left the country broken when he left. And I find it interesting that people say President Trump is so divisive when the reason he won blue states is because Democrats crossed over in unity with President Trump.
Katie, do you think
I got to break in with some breaking news because we have the first full formal meeting right now inside the White House between the president and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And he's meeting with the president today at the White House to talk about UN reform. Now, remember some of the things that President Trump has said. He wants to see reform there to make the UN actually something that is within the vernacular of working today. Let's watch.
Friends, even before I was doing what I'm doing right now, we were friends. We knew each other. You have done a very, very spectacular job at the United Nations, and I can tell you, speaking for the United States, we appreciate it, and I know you're working with our ambassador. Nikki is in a very, very unique class. We're very proud of you, and we want to thank you for the job you're doing. But it's an honor to have you, and thank you very much for being here. A lot to discuss.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I must say that I'm extremely grateful, first of all, for the support that you have given us in relation to our reform process coming to the General Assembly. I'm a true believer that we live in a messy world, but we need a strong, reformed and modernized UN. We need a strong United States engaged based on its traditional values, freedom, democracy, human rights, and we need a very solid cooperation between the U.S. and the UN. And it's a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have to say the United Nations has tremendous potential. It hasn't been used over the years nearly as it should be, but the United Nations, perhaps almost more than any other thing I can think of. And I will tell you, I also happen to think that the United States, even as well as we're doing right now, has additionally tremendous potential. We have just started. But the United Nations has this great it's almost a power to bring people together like nothing else. It hasn't been used. You are starting to really get your arms around it, and I have a feeling that things are going to happen with the United Nations like you haven't seen before. I mean, to have this group of nations in one location with one person, which is you, leading it strongly, I think is, in terms of world peace and other things, and many other things that you're working on, I just wish you luck, because the potential that you have is really unlimited. Good luck.
Thank you very much. And I need all the luck.
No, you need luck. You need luck and you need talent. Okay? You need talent, and he's got the talent. Now we'll see what happens. I'll report back to you in about 7 years what I think. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Chief of Staff remarks.
So you have there the UN Secretary General Guterres, who said, we live in a messy world. We need a strong, reformed United Nations, which is interesting because, you know, this president has been so firm in making the UN relevant and successful. He says he sees a lot of potential there, but things have to change. He said that on a world stage, not just here in the United States. And then Guterres also said we need a strong relationship with the United States to make things work. Praise for the UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who has been doing some work across North Korea, Iran, and so many issues there at the UN. The president meeting in the White House for the first full formal meeting between these two men. We brought you that as it was happening. Well, the mainstream media is going after President Trump after he tweeted about a report involving the Clintons in Russia. Instead of talking about the report, they mocked the president. Is it media bias? We'll talk about it. Stay with us. Might the mainstream media be at it again? MSNBC went after President Trump after he tweeted about a report involving Russia, a racketeering scheme, and the Clintons. Trump tweeted this: uranium deal to Russia with Clinton help and Obama administration knowledge is the biggest story that fake media does not want to follow. Watch how they covered the story on Morning Joe.
What do you make of this sort of yearning obsession with Hillary Clinton? It's sad, but also a little frightening at this point.
Look, there's a moral vacuum in the White House right now. Do you ever wake up any mornings with an instinct or an urge to tweet about Mike Pence? Because after all, you ran against him 11 months ago, and I'm just wondering if you have some of the same urges. Yeah, have some of the same urges that Donald Trump has. You know, no. The president is tweeting about a political opponent from a year ago. It is.
I'm just telling you, if this guy worked for a small company in the Midwest, he'd be dragged out. There'd be an intervention.
He would be fired.
Katie?
I think that they're missing the point. So I'm going to take the president out of this, and I'm going to focus on the story he's talking about. He's discussing Hillary Clinton while she was Secretary of State, approving a deal that allowed Russian nuclear officials to gain a little more control of U.S. uranium, while Bill Clinton was being paid millions of dollars by the same Russian nuclear officials. That is something we should be concerned about, whether the president wants to bring attention to it or not. And he's right that they didn't cover it this week as they would have if the shoe was on the other foot.
Juan's Democrat friends may be also concerned because he was nodding in agreement with you while you were talking.
Yeah, because I thought Katie accurately described it. I mean, in fact, more money went to the Clinton Foundation, Katie.
Right.
It's more than $100 million.
$146 million.
And so what you get is a situation where people could say there's some kind of quid pro quo at risk here. Now, the contrary point, though, is that this story has been out for more than a year. It's not a new story.
But
so
there
it's
is something
been well
new in
discussed. I'm sorry.
It has been out for quite some time,
Yes.
and we've raised all these questions about conflict of interest. But the new wrinkle in all this is that the FBI at the time was apparently investigating Russia's desire to have a bigger imprint in our atomic energy sector. So when they're investigating this, and simultaneously, you have a Russian state-sponsored company purchasing 20% of the U.S. uranium supply, you have to ask yourself, how do those deals happen? In other words, deals, when they are done, Juan, they have to get approved. They have regulators that approve them. In this particular case, this is something that would go to the State Department. Well, why were there no red flags?
Well, in this
how on earth do you allow Russia that opportunity?
It was the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States,
along with the State Department. And again, if the FBI is investigating this, wouldn't that give anyone pause? Wouldn't somebody stop and say, okay, maybe it's not a good idea because there's an FBI ongoing investigation that's looking at how Putin wants to affect our energy sector?
All right. Jillian, I want to give you the last word on this because you brought this up.
Yeah,
and it sounds like something that maybe the AG or someone should look at. I know Judge Napolitano has said there could be a cause to open something.
I think that's probably the way forward here. You need to open some kind of a new investigation into this. The reason I mentioned the mechanism by which all this happened, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, is because I think it's important for us to have a better understanding of how that works. I think the way that it actually works is that the State Department and the Secretary of State is like a member.
And I want to make this point. It's not like we're talking about, Doritos, which I'm a fan of. No, we're talking about uranium.
Exactly.
Okay, this is a controlled. This is a substance we want to know where it's going, particularly.
And energy is how Russia yields power around the world. So it's very important.
The battle in the culture war is not over. President Trump is firing another salvo after the NFL failed to force players to stand for the national anthem. Whether more Americans turn off the NFL and side with the president, we got more football coming up this weekend. How's that going to look? We'll talk about it next.
More Outnumbered in just a moment, but first let's touch base with Harris for a look at what's coming up on Outnumbered Overtime in just a couple of moments. Hey, Harris.
All right, thanks, guys. Here's what we're working on. We will dig deeper into the state of play on a bipartisan effort on health care reform and the GOP's first victory on the road to tax cuts. Senator Bill Cassidy with the inside scoop on both. And the CIA director says North Korea could be able to hit the United States mainland with a nuclear weapon in a matter of months. So what do we do? Militarily, what does it look like? Preemptive strike? General Jack Keane will join me. That's atop the hour. Now back to you guys.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. All right, President Trump, everyone, stepping up his battle with the NFL. His campaign team launching a petition for supporters who want players to stand for our national anthem. It was released a day after NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell rejected calls to punish players who kneel during the anthem. The NFL has faced growing backlash over these protests, which started last season. Then San Francisco quarterback Colin Kaepernick took a knee to call attention to racial inequality and police brutality. And boy, has this set off a firestorm, Katie.
Yeah, I think that people want this to be over, to be honest. I think that they want the NFL to respect the views of the rest of the country so they can watch their football and move on. But they're turning the television off. This looks like it's coming from the Trump America Great Again committee. To me, it looks like a fundraising ploy. You know, they know that the majority of the country is on their side and they're trying to make money on it now. We've been over the comments from the NFL over and over again. Roger Goodell failed to take a stand on either side, which I think is a cop-out. And I think people will vote with their clickers and not tune in or buy tickets.
I think you are such a truth teller, Katie, because this is a fundraiser. That's what's going on here. Most Americans don't want the players kneeling, but they also think that the president and the NFL shouldn't punish people for using that platform as a way to protest.
Well, okay, but let me just jump in. Jillian, these players, they're collecting a check. They're doing a job. The job's to play football and to entertain. And part of that whole football game is steeped in sort of American traditions and Americana, and that includes standing for the anthem. I mean, why don't the team owners just say, okay, we're going to cut you loose? Or why doesn't Roger Goodell say to the players, you got to stand for this. This is part of your job, or you're not going to make it,
because frankly, Trish, their job is not to be patriotic and care about the United States from the NFL's perspective. Their job is to make money.
But maybe it should be.
That's all they care about. This is all driven by financial interest on the part of the NFL. I think everybody's time, attention, and energy at this point would be much better spent focusing on, okay, these players are trying to call attention to this issue, racial inequality in this country. Let's have a productive and engaging conversation.
Yeah, well, why not
forget about fighting it out on the football field?
You're right about the fact that it is their job to make money, and their behavior on the field in this way to take up a political cause while they're at work has cost the NFL millions and millions of dollars. It's cost them sponsorships. It's cost them subscriptions on television. It's cost them money on season tickets. It has cost them in the ratings. So take away the patriotism, take away, what you believe in. This is a business deal that the NFL is refusing to acknowledge. And if their job is just to play football and make money, then they should be enforcing the policy they already have in their handbook.
So they're shooting themselves in the foot. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
It's all going to come down to that revenue. More Outnumbered in just a moment. Thank you so much to Juan Williams. Good to see you here today. Thank you to you, Jillian. Thank you, later. It was a lot of fun, and we're going to be back on Monday at noon Eastern, everyone. Outnumbered Overtime with Harris Faulkner starts right now.
We'll begin with